Good morning. Welcome to the Javro Ignite Leadership Series. We are back, we are live, and I'm excited to have Friska Wirya joining me today, and I will bring her on shortly. I just want to have a quick chat to you about, firstly, why do I do this? Why do I bring these conversations to you? And to thank you so much for your ongoing support with them. So I started this program. It's something I'd always wanted to do. I have worked with leaders in the IT industry for around about 20 years. And I have met some incredibly impressive people, and some people who I've always wanted to introduce to others. You know, I've always felt like I need to connect these people because they get on really well. And I've also seen a number of leaders come through their careers, really develop their fabulous leadership styles. I've seen leaders who've struggled to get access to good mentors, who have, tried and tested a lot of things along the way to really find their own leadership style. And so bringing these conversations is my way of bringing mentors to you. So mentors mainly from the IT industry. Some are outside the IT industry. So if I think there's value from a leader doing something a little left of field, then I will bring them on as well. But really bringing mentors to you so that you can check in for half an hour, have a coffee, spend a bit of time, join in the conversation, ask any questions, possibly get a bit of mentoring yourself, and just enjoy connecting with other people, other like-minded people in the industry. And so I kind of see it as mentors mentoring mentors, because I think all of us have something to bring. All of us have something to say when it comes to leadership, and that goes from self-leadership to people leadership and business leadership. So I love bringing these sessions to you every Thursday, and I am thrilled to have a lineup of amazing people ready to go for the next 6 weeks. So I'm looking forward to bringing a lot of great leaders on for you. I'm also launching an extended program. So just to quickly let you know, if you haven't heard already, the exciting news is I've been asked by a lot of people to bring more and to connect them with more information, more knowledge. So I have almost completed the setup of this membership program that I'm putting together. That will be going live in about a week's time, and you will be able to get access to a whole lot more mentoring, a whole lot more coaching. We will be talking and drilling down with mentors and some of the people I've spoken to on the show already, some of the people I will be speaking to, and others, about specific leadership topics and things that are lessons that they can really bring and leave you with some good steps and strategies to take away. So I'll also be incorporating roundtables and masterminds into the program. So if you become a member of the program, you will have access to attend all of those roundtables and masterminds. So again, direct access to great mentors and conversations. So very excited about that. Watch this space. I will be launching that over the next week. Today, I would love you to get involved in the conversation. So, I really would love, firstly, for you to let me know you're there. It's very challenging when you're talking and you don't know who's there, and you're not sure if it's resonating or it's hitting home. So do let me know you're there. Let me know where you're looking or you're watching from. Where you're watching from. Let me know if you're on the live or you're on the recording, because I know that a lot of you watch it on the recording, and thank you for that. And just get involved in the conversation. So we're here to answer questions as well. Friska will be very happy to answer questions today as well. So please, as much interaction as you can muster, we would love you to join us in today's discussion. So that said, I'm just going to quickly check for the link to make sure. Hi, Michael. How are you? Thank you for joining. I'm just going to look up the link on my side, and then I'm going to bring the amazing Friska on. So sorry, bear with me. Awesome. Okay, so I can see that we've got people there. We've got messages coming up on LinkedIn. They're not all hitting my screen yet. So thank you so much for joining. I'm going to bring Friska on now and just tell you a little bit about her. Firstly, hi, Friska. How are you today?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks, Rebecca.
Excellent. Now, I'm just going to just give our audience a little bit of an understanding of who you are and what you are bringing to this conversation. So Friska helps organisations and individuals within them more readily accept and thrive through change. And I think we all know that's a very, very important thing. She brings digital transformation to life by accelerating adoption and building proficiency at scale, having worked for some of the biggest names in the mining, engineering, and technology space. Friska's a change and transformation expert and has been for almost a decade, and she's led change programs of up to 23,000 people across 6 continents, which is huge. She's headed change at Newcrest Mining, and who are the largest gold miner on the ASX, and leading its digital transformation changes to achieve significant financial and innovation outcomes. Sorry, I speak properly today. Winning the 2018 METS Ignited Collaboration Award. And there are a whole lot of other accolades that Friska has achieved through her change management experience. She did a lot of work globally for the engineering company Worley prior to that. And Friska's experience and leadership success in environments that are typically male dominated and change averse is pretty powerful. And so I'm absolutely thrilled that she's come to join us today to talk to us about some of her experience, I'll say adventures and lessons in the change management space. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, we've got lots of people jumping on. Hi, Marcek. Hi, Alatundi. I hope I've said that right. Than Pithcha, or Tanya, sorry for short. Welcome. Friska, I would love to start by asking you, as I tend to like to know from people, what brought you into leadership in the first place? What was it that sort of got you there?
Well, I first had to learn how to lead myself. And because I had always worked in quite international companies, lots of different cultures and ethnicities, I had to learn how to lead people of different backgrounds and cultures and professions. And I got my first real leadership role a few years ago now when I was helping to build the change management capability at Fujitsu. And it was a $42 million technology implementation at the world's single largest police jurisdiction, where the stakes literally were life or death. And it was the project director that gave me that opportunity. And since that baptism of fire, I've continued on the same vein. So I like what you did in the beginning when you actually asked people to say, are you actually there or not? Because I think that's a key skill of leadership. Too often we regard leaders as communicating, but really it's just talking. They rarely check for understanding. So yeah, kudos to you, because I think that's a key trait of an effective leader. Communication at the end of the day is two-way. And if you're not checking for understanding, you cannot know about the people that you lead, and most likely they will not follow you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's really lovely. And I am blown away by your first major project. That's incredible. That must have been kind of scary walking into that. No pressure, but life or death and police, and it just all sounds a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, imagine sending a police helicopter in the wrong direction. Or someone's got a armed robbery and you send a canine in. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of balls up in the air.
And I love what you said about self-leadership as well. And I think a lot of people don't see that they are leaders, but every single one of us has the capacity to lead. And the first person we must lead is ourselves. So I absolutely love that. Was that something you realized at a young age?
Yes. So a little bit about background. I'm an only child. I lost both my parents at 2 weeks old. So I grew up by myself. So I had to learn the basics, like how to self-soothe, mental health, emotional health, physical health. So I had to get the basics for myself first before I could then lead other people.
Yeah, wow. And you obviously did an amazing job at that. So kudos to you. That's incredible. And so when you moved, I mean, I love what you say about leadership being communication, and you're right. It's about, I don't think it's about talking at people. It's really about talking with people and really understanding and getting curious about what's going on, and what could, and the possibilities as well. So for you, what were the sort of, give me the top sort of 3 lessons when you first moved into leadership? What were the sort of 3 things that were really key that you learned were important?
Alignment between what you say and do is, yeah, sure, everybody knows that's important, but what really counts is what you reinforce. For example, if you say you value innovation, then you set aside budget for it, but then how do you reinforce it? You reinforce it by when someone sticks their neck out and tries something new and it doesn't work, you don't rap them on the knuckles. You instead encourage that, because we only learn from failure. Really, it's not a failure, it's a learning, right? Failure from a learning. And so, those 3 things have to be in alignment: your words, your actions, and what you reinforce. They can't be incongruent. So that's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 is, when you're trying to lead a change in your organization, it's not the kind of thing that you can delegate. Like, you have to show up, you have to be there. You can't give it to your 2IC. Changing mindsets and behaviors is not going to happen overnight, and it's a contact sport. So you have to be visible, you have to be in there, and you have to roll up your sleeves and get amongst it. And lastly, number 3 is, I think, 3 steps. Listen first, learn, and then finally lead, in that order. So I think it's a sequential process.
Yeah. That's amazing. And are these things that you find when you're going into organizations now and you're working with them and consulting to them, are these things gaps that you find in most? That's a big thing to say, but do you often find that these are the gaps?
Oh, it's not a big thing to say. It's a fact. The top 2 reasons why a change falls over is ineffective leadership and ineffective communication. So often the communication is very transactional. It's very one way. There's no warmth, there's no empathy, and they don't check for understanding. So if you don't check for understanding, how would you know if it's hitting the mark? And number 2 is the leadership element, because I can develop the most elegantly engineered change strategy, but if the leaders don't walk and talk and bring it to life, then it's not going to get the outcomes that they want.
Yeah, amazing. And so how, when you're in a project, because you're an external consultant now, I mean, maybe going back to when you were in a project, when you were in the organization, have you got any tips on some tricks you use to get the leaders on board? Because a lot of the time, especially and forgive me for saying this, everybody in the audience who is male, but in a male dominated environment, sometimes there is, it's not as comfortable to show your EQ or to be vulnerable and all of the things that you're talking about. So are there tricks that you've used to sort of help guide
to get people on board? De-risk as much as possible. So don't make it seem like it's this massive tidal wave of change that they need to commit to. So start small. Like, everybody started from somewhere. So start piloting your approach or whatever it is that you're trying to progress on one small team, one small department. Make sure you execute it to the best of your ability. Make sure you get the results, and then that forms a case study, and then promote the heck out of it. And it will encourage people to build their risk appetite. So that would be my biggest tip. Like, don't bite off more than you can chew. Just start making little bites and you will get there. Because at the end of the day, reducing people's fear of failure does not happen overnight. And it takes a lot of repetition of key messages in different ways and different formats for it to finally sink in. Number 2 would be to encourage some sort of competitive spirit. So if an organization is very conservative and risk averse, what I do instead is position the change not within that company, but within the context of a broader industry. Like, make it saying this is industry standard, because everybody wants to achieve at least industry standard. So again, that makes it seem like what may be a giant leap for that company is really a small step when the change is positioned in the right way.
Absolutely. So when you're walking into an organization, it's going to be a lot easier when you've got a scenario where the leaders are already living the right values and have got the right sort of fundamentals in place. When they haven't, it's got to be a long-term approach. So, I'm guessing a lot of companies want change fast. So how do you temper that? Because obviously that change, as you say, takes a long time, or can take a long time. So how do you rise to those challenges?
I mean, that's why culture change takes years to affect, because it's not just the strategy, but it relies a lot on the people. So my focus lies on digital transformation, and I remind them what it was like when they were first learning to ride a bike. So just because you, for example, install a new ERP system, it doesn't mean people are going to be proficient the very next day and you're going to get those benefits. It takes time to build that skill, right? Like before we learned how to ride a bike, we knew logically how to do it. We hopped on, put our feet in the pedals and start pedaling one foot after the other. But hey, everybody started with training wheels on, and then we grew our capability and our confidence to finally get those training wheels off. So expecting productivity to not dip at all is it's insane. There will be a dip, but my challenge is to reduce that dip to make it as small as possible. And you do that through ongoing communication, training, capability building, and lastly, reinforcement, which is the important bit, making sure that it sticks.
Yeah, I love that reinforcement. I know it's something you put a lot of focus on. Can you give me an example of reinforcement through leadership?
Yes. So often leaders think that they need to reinforce by STIs, bonuses, great perks and whatnot, but you have no idea. Do not underestimate the impact, the power of you noticing someone doing something different, and that will ignite motivation to keep going like wildfire. I remember there was this new solution that we had implemented, and I had one of the GMs. I specifically said, look, these are 3 people I want you to talk to when you're on site. They've done a lot of testing, they've made sure it works, and this has been the impact. And he did that. He had the FaceTime with them. It was probably a 15-second conversation, but that when they went back to their teams, that spread like wildfire. So yeah, FaceTime is so important for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, what you're saying in terms of all of it really revolves around the leader's got to show up, and the leader's got to reinforce, and they've got to be part of the change, like you say. And that goes for any kind of leadership, right? And not just change management. So it's so important that you have that sort of consistent connection with your team. Sometimes the purpose of a project or a digital transformation is fairly simple, but how do you get people connected to the bigger picture, to the bigger purpose of it? Is there tips you've got around that?
At risk of sounding like a broken record and Simon Sinek, you really got to start with why are we doing this? And connect them. It's not just for a paycheck, but it's to enable, like, for example, resources companies. They invest a lot of money in community projects. They do things, they bring initiatives to light that the government can't do. So really, that's why, the more productivity savings, the more cost savings, the more safety outcomes that are driven, it's not just better for you and I, but the entire community benefits. At the end of the day, they are the largest taxpayer in this country. So it's just to keep that messaging top of mind when you're engaging with people.
Yeah, because it's very easy to get sort of stuck in the weeds and
it
the
is.
detail and the action steps and all of that stuff, and forget the messaging. Especially when there's pressure to get it done.
Yeah. I mean, if it was obviously like the example that I gave with the policing client, that was a very easy sell because it was there in black and white. You get this wrong, lives are at risk. And so you need to try to think of a way, come up with different analogies to suit your situation. There is something, there is always something. There's always a strong why that will enable people, that will resonate with people. You just have to balance the right ratio of logic and emotion.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to have to go through this whole interview again and pull out all your amazing one line, like you're just your little things. I think someone's put one up in here. I'm just going to jump into the chat box for a second and have a look at who's here. So Catherine, hi. Catherine Robertson's thanking you for your great advice. Michael had to leave. If I've missed you, Michael, thanks for joining. Question for Friska. This is from Shrikant. Could you talk to common problems and issues that you observe within communication across different enterprises, which has teams from diverse backgrounds? To put it simply, for example, as a prior software professional, I can say that most problems exist with lack of clarity in the requirements before the product can be developed.
Again, that's I think it's because people don't check for understanding, and there is still a great reliance on emails, reports, and whatnot. They're ineffective. Look, the high impact communication methods, the most effective, are also the most intensive. Like, for example, face-to-face meetings, right? Like, you're always on, you're not distracted, but very rarely do people invest that time and that effort to get it right. And also, you shouldn't rely on one channel of communication. So you need to vary your formats just to different learning styles, different cultures. And I think something that's worked quite effectively in the past to sustain behavioral change is a simple red light, green light system. So red light, this is what's not to do. Green light, this is what you should do. When it comes to software implementations and requirements, I think I have noticed a tendency for the business and IT to speak in very different languages. And if IT keeps on talking in their own industry jargon, it will antagonate the business. So you need to have common terminology, common terms of reference, so people get what the hell you're talking about. So those would be my top 3 tips.
Yeah, that's awesome. What a great question and what a great answer. Thank you. And so when you're communicating with the different, it's almost like as you say, software is a different language. Do you have a translator? Is it a good idea to have a translator involved? So somebody who's sort of the person who is the step between the business and the tech people.
Yes, for sure. So when I'm supporting a company to bring their digital transformation to life, I have a domain expert usually and a tech expert, and together we develop the messaging, because it's not just the world according to the change manager or the world according to the IT guru. If you're trying to influence the masses to do something they haven't done before and to support a particular digital change, then they need to understand what they're signing up for. They need to understand the benefits and what they need to do differently. Yeah. And so it's a team effort.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, it was a team sport earlier on. Matthew Rogan's on. Hi, Matthew. How are you? And he said it's behavioural change.
Troublemaker.
Yeah. So yeah, he's behavioural change will outlast KPIs. So that's absolutely true. Every time. Catherine saying, this is the benefit as a leader, that we can be intentional and then work backwards. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Yanis. Everybody else is just acknowledging the conversation. So thank you for this golden information. There's been so many nuggets already.
I have one more tip about that communication thing, because I think it's really important. Have a single source of truth. So people always refer to that one channel or portal, and they know that is actually the cold hard facts. And number 2 is make sure your spokespeople are singing from the same hymn sheet. I'll give you a perfect example. So when the borders were about to close, I was actually on a flight from Sydney to Melbourne, and the coronavirus Australian government website says, masks are mandatory. So we thought, yep, it's mandatory. But then on the Qantas loudspeaker, it says masks are strongly encouraged. And I tell you, everybody was confused. Like, do we keep them on? Do we keep them off? Like, that's something so simple. So one word, mandatory versus encouraged, is enough to cause confusion. And you imagine how many people in organizations use slightly different words. So that's just a simple example of what goes on and why change management should be a core capability.
That's absolutely brilliant. And in terms of the communication and the one source of truth is brilliant in any scenario, because that's so many businesses, especially the big companies. You know, everything, the gossip and the opinions and everything that's just sort of swirling around and causes so many problems. And so,
Yeah.
you know, I wonder, just with the new, because there's a whole lot of new tools now available that companies are starting to use, and with the fact that we are all working from, or a lot of us are working from home, you know, it's really shifted how we communicate. I wonder, do you think that that's had a positive effect on this? Do you think naturally we're going to start getting better at funneling conversations and communication in the one way, you know, without all the gossip and hearsay?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's harder now to communicate because you're not privy to people's body language and picking up the vibe in the room. Like, how can you pick up a vibe when all you're looking at are people's faces on a Zoom call? So I think
Yeah,
it's easier to reach people for sure, but I think it's harder to get the comprehension.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And but in terms of some of the tools, have you seen more uptake in some of the tools in terms of channeling? Like, for example, using a specific Slack channel for a particular project or team, or that
Oh
sort of
yeah,
thing?
I
Mm.
love Slack. It saved my inbox and my
Yeah,
sanity. I think another great tool would be the online workshopping tools such as Miro. They're amazing. You can do timers. You can do everything in real time. Collaborate. So yeah, there's some really funky tools out there that people just need to get their head around and start using.
yeah, absolutely. And I
Mm.
think, you know, some companies have really not enforced these things, and so I mean, perhaps they do around certain projects, but you know, it could be much more widespread and can be, I
Yeah.
think, helpful.
Mm.
Mm. Um, I'm just checking the time. I've got a question here for you, Friska. Friska, can you blend storytelling in any change management process?
Yes, and you have to use storytelling because it's the most effective way to get messages across. I mean, we are hardwired for stories. Most people have a favorite nursery rhyme. It doesn't even, or fables, right? They help us understand the meaning behind why certain events happen. Yeah. And so the basics of fundamental storytelling, I use that in my communication when I'm trying to get people on board with the change. Storytelling, vision for change is something probably the top one or two requests that I get from leaders for assistance with. Yeah.
Right. And there's a lot more, I'm hearing a lot more on storytelling through everything, especially through sales now. So, you know, people are talking to that. I think it's always been there. It's just now someone's identified that it's storytelling.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And you know, metaphors and things that people can connect to, and often even something that's not necessarily direct but is more of an indirect metaphor is really powerful when in terms of getting the subconscious to commit to change or to see the value or to feel more comfortable with what's going on.
Yes,
Yeah.
metaphors are very powerful. I mean, in a consumer product example, think of the iPod when it was first launched, right? 1,000 songs in your pocket. I
Mm.
mean, straight away you're like, wow, I get it, versus what everybody else was saying, which is, oh, it's an MP3 music player.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you do this and you download this and you la 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 la. Yeah, no, it's simple.
Mm,
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so powerful. Um, I'm just going to check in again. So Catherine's saying, love the aspect of the importance of communication. As leaders, we must communicate the standards, expectations, and unspoken words. Um, what breed the issues? Yeah, absolutely.
mm,
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? Well, we've just said it. We've spoken to that, haven't we?
mm.
And so for you, I mean, I am just going to touch on the diversity issue for a second, and the
Yep.
fact that you have been really successful driving change, even when you have been probably are fairly standout in terms of your what is it? I think you said you're the only person in stilettos in the room.
Oh,
Um,
yes, I'm often the only stiletto in a room full of flats, metaphorically and literally. Yes.
yeah, yeah. So how important do you think diversity is to organizations in affecting change and innovation?
Look, I don't think diversity should just be relegated to gender, but diversity of thought as well. Because if you don't have a different range of people in the room, then you're stuck with yesterday's thinking, and you can't use yesterday's thinking to solve the challenges of tomorrow. So I think it's really important. And every year, the world is getting more complex, challenging, and competitive to survive in. And so hence you have to innovate. Like, if there's no other option. And you obviously, it's the people that innovate. It's not machines that innovate. So you need a good mix of people to propel your business forward.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. The line between AI and humans and where the innovation actually comes from. So, I mean, ultimately, we've got to work with the data and create the opportunities as well. Yeah, interesting. Sorry, I was just checking into the chat box again. Question. There's no questions. It's just a comment. So just thank you for the insights, which have been fantastic. If you had to give, if you could only give one piece of advice through your experience to leaders coming through, and it was only one you could leave them with, what would it be?
You do you and do it well. Like, it's all very well and good to be inspired by other leadership figures and things that have worked for other people. But at the end of the day, you need to find your own style and you need to be comfortable with that. And just because you find your own style, it doesn't mean that's set in stone. So just, you have to tailor it obviously to the people that you're leading. So
yeah. I love that. And I think this is part of why I bring these conversations to the table, is because, everybody can read a theory book.
Yeah.
And it does take time to find your style and to work out, what works for you. And I think it is about having the courage to be vulnerable and be yourself as well. So that's absolutely crucial. But understanding, some of the models and some of the things that you need to do underlying that to affect good leadership.
Sorry. And one more, the importance of asking questions. Like, if you're not sure how your leadership style is landing with your team, for goodness sake, ask them. Like, don't assume. So that's
the vulnerability again, and the ability, and that's, it's hard, it's challenging. And I think you got to ask your mentors as well. So, ask people for input, ask your customers, ask everybody. So curiosity is my favorite word. I just love it. And it can solve so many things. It can create so many opportunities. And if you don't ask, you just don't know. So really, really powerful. That's fantastic. So we are just about at 12 o'clock. It flies when we're on these sessions. I would love to ask you to come back on to and have some, come back with me to have some conversations so that we can drill down a little bit more deeply on some of these things, and add it to the extended content that I'm developing at the moment. I would absolutely love some of your insights specifically on change, and also how to, you're fairly young as well. Just I know compared to me, you're fairly young. So, how you can create your own style as a leader, no matter what age you are. So I'd love to talk about those things.
For sure.
Offline, if that's awesome. All right, so I will be in touch with you to arrange that. I'm looking forward to it. Next week I have Stephen Wirya on. So Stephen.
Oh, yes, I do.
So
Big
next
fan of
week
Stephen.
I have Stephen on from ShareTree, and Stephen runs a not-for-profit and does some phenomenal things around leadership, culture, character traits, and gratitude and acknowledgement and all sorts of amazing things. So I'm really looking forward to having Stephen on to talk about his journey as well. So for anyone who's interested, we will be back here next week at 11:30, and you can connect with Friska on LinkedIn and Instagram, and I think where else are you? Are you everywhere, or are you on Instagram? I'm assuming you're on Instagram.
I am, but I'm not active.
Okay,
yeah.
so LinkedIn is
my
the
go-to
place.
portal.
LinkedIn
Yes.
is the place. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So
yeah.
do reach out to Friska. She'd love to connect with you, I'm sure. Thank you again for joining us. I hope you got great value today, and I really appreciate your time, Friska, as well, knowing you're moving house tomorrow as well. So good luck with that.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We will see you soon.